Hi, how you doing? Uh, I was asked about my stew, and I thought, well, I was going to write down the recipe, but that's way too much stuff to write down. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do a video on it, and that way we know exactly what we're talking about. And this is basically just an old-fashioned from how did the people live, you know, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago. Basically, they had a cauldron. You threw a cauldron on the fire, and you just started throwing stuff in, and it was all whole foods, nothing processed or anything. So that's kind of the way I looked at this, and I wanted something that I could eat that would fill me up, would basically be fairly low carb. This isn't zero carb or nothing. There's a few carbs in it. But I make a big enough pot and there's enough water in it that whole pot will last me probably 5 days. And so carbs per day out of the stew is probably around maybe 5 to 10 carbs in it. So that's how I figured this. And I basically lived on this for the past year. I mean, I eat other things and I'll eat my meats and stuff, but that's always tended to be my fallback thing, was my old-fashioned meat stew. And so, and I will use pork, tenderloin, whatever's on sale at the store. Before we bought our hog, we got a whole hog in the freezer now, so I got all kinds of good stuff. I just made a stew with some pork steaks, throw a couple pounds of hamburger in there, mix that together with some beef fat that we had in the fridge from a prime rib. Oh man, it was just delicious that way. And I always add a little fat because I want, when that stew gets cold, there's a layer of fat on top, and when I heat it up, it starts bubbling and the fat melts, and then I can dip in with my ladle and get my bowl of stew. So I'll use pork, beef. I've used chicken thighs, chicken legs. I've thrown them in there. And this is all going in my pressure cooker. I got a big pressure cooker that I pressure cook pretty much everything. Rosalie does a lot of the stuff in the oven and stuff. When I make my stuff, I make a big bunch of it and make it so it'll last me. I don't like to cook every day, but I can take it out of the fridge and put it on the stove and warm it up. I'm lazy. It's got to be easy and delicious. That's the secret of this. So I'll brown some beef or pork or a little chicken, and there I'll put my animal fat, my beef fat or my pork fat in there, get that heated up so that you got a good thing. Then I'll brown my stuff in that fat. And then once we get that, if it's a big chunk of meat, like I've used a pork butt, and there was a lot of meat, and that I will put some onions in it, and maybe my diced tomatoes, which is just a can of Kroger's diced tomatoes. There's only 4 grams of carbs in a serving, so there's 12 grams in this can. It's 3 servings. 3 times 4, yeah, that's 12 grams. So, and you make that over a big batch. That's, maybe 4 grams or less to a meal. And then I will add an onion to that, and then I will button that up, and I'll cook my meat with an onion and some tomatoes in there just for flavor, and add my salt, pepper, garlic powder. I like it a little spicy because I don't have indigestion no more. It it was the vegetable oil that was giving me the indigestion, not the fat. Who knew? So I use crushed red pepper. I'll throw some chili powder in, or that Great Value from Walmart chili powder has 0 carbs in it. Paprika. I'll even throw some Italian seasoning in there, and I just do it to taste. I button that all up, and then I'll cook my meat in my pressure cooker for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And that usually makes it real tender. If it's a real tough piece of meat, I will slice the meat, and then I will do the baking soda trick. Rub it on the meat, flop them over, rub them on the meat, and then set them aside for about 2 hours. And that just absolutely makes a tough piece of meat. You can buy the cheapest meat you can find and rub a little baking soda on it, bicarbonate, Arm & Hammer baking soda, on both sides. Let it sit for about 2 hours. Then come back and put it under running water, rinse it off, and then put it in there. And you'll swear you're eating prime rib. I mean, it's as tender as prime rib. It's as tender as filet mignon. That's a great little hack that Chinese has been doing for 1,000 years. But that really tenderizes the meat. And basically, when you're putting the meat in with the tomatoes, there's enough acid in the tomatoes that if you didn't get all the baking soda off, bicarbonate soda, whatever it is, you'd never notice, because it helps get rid of the gas in the tomatoes, because they're a little acidic. And so then I'll do the meat that way for about 35 minutes. Then I'll take my pressure cooker off, and then I'll add my veggies, whatever veggies I want. I usually go to Walmart and I get these bags of broccoli. Cheapest thing, what are they, like 80 cents a bag? And they're broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. I've used cabbage. I love to slice a couple chunks of cabbage and put in there. Or whatever, there's times like I got written down here. I've used, Rosalie will have some raw carrots and celery sticks in the fridge, and I've chopped them up and added them to it. I don't use a lot of carrots because I think carrots have a little more sugar than some of the other stuff. But the celery, I don't care for raw celery and raw carrots, but I like them cooked, so I'll throw them in there. Along, like I said, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. I've gotten some of that Normandy blend at Walmart that comes in them big bags for $5. They have some slices of squash and stuff in them too. And by the time I got, it don't take very many vegetables to fill up my pot, because I got mostly meat in there, a lot of meat. It's a meat stew. It's not a vegetable stew. This is a meat stew with a high content of fat. And then I will cook that up. I've also added, if I don't have some of them things, cauliflower, broccoli, or Brussels sprouts, I've added a can of green beans in there. They're only 4 carbs, and then I will button it back up, and then I'll pressure cook my vegetables for about 10 to 12 minutes. So all told, you've been cooking for maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes for the whole thing to take. Pop it open, stir it up, and you'll see when it's a good mixture. And after you cook it all up, it does render down. And so then I will add water, and I'll bring it back up to a full pot, because usually I've added enough seasoning that it's pretty spicy, and so then I'll add water to it, and you will see the little bubbles of fat floating around in the stew, and that's the way I know it's good, because you have lots of bubbles of fat. And I have been doing that when I started this, I would eat my stew with a piece of meat. And it was one bowl of stew, and that's probably 2-3 cups. It's a glass bowl, and with a piece of meat, and that hit the spot to the point where sometimes I couldn't eat all my meat. And once I realized that I could do this easy and delicious, I just stayed with it, and the weight started coming off, my health started coming up, I started feeling good because there was no processed sugar, there's no processed grains, and there's no seed oils in this. It's all whole, real food. And that's the secret of a carnivore diet or the keto diet or carnivish. This is kind of a carnivish keto style. It's not really keto because there's a few grams of carbs, but I think as a serving there's under 20, and isn't that what keto is high fat, low carb. Well, if you can keep your carbs under 20, because I can process carbs pretty decent. It's the processed sugars, processed grains, and seed oils that kill me, you know. And I'm an overeater, and so I have to cook something that I can eat that satisfies me to where I'm full, I'm done, I can't eat another drop, and then I'm happy. And so this is what I come across that makes me happy at full, and I can walk away from the table and I eat an OMAD. I'm on OMAD. I one meal a day, and it's just the way it does, and I just do it day after day after day after day. I don't get tired of it. Rosalie has to have variety, and I will eat that and then eat that all up, and then, like I said, it usually takes me about 5 days. So probably Friday or Saturday, Rosalie's got some stuff sitting there in the fridge, and I might eat just straight carnivore for 1 or 2 days. And then I will go ahead, like on a Sunday, and make my stew again. I'll eat that probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or something like that. And it works just so well for me. This last stew I made, it was pretty much all meat. I wanted a real hearty meat stew, and that's what I did with. I had in the freezer from, God, long time ago. I bought one of them huge rolls of Walmart hamburger, like 10, 12, 20 pounders. I don't know, they're huge. And I sliced it all up into chunks about that long and throwed it in the freezer. And I went through there yesterday, I guess it was, and I rummaged around, and I found a couple of them pieces of Walmart hamburger. So I threw that in the pot, and Rosalie pulled out some really nice pork steaks, pork chops. I don't remember. But they were sliced, and they were about over an inch thick. And she cooked 2 of them up for her, and then I did my baking soda trick on them, laid them off to the side for a couple hours, then washed them off, put them in the pot with some diced tomatoes and a can of green beans and an onion, and I didn't put any vegetables in that. That was it. And I cooked that for about 35 minutes, and popped that off in my pressure cooker, and I'll tell you what, it was to die for last night. I had 2 bowls of it, and I've lost a couple pounds. When I hit 100 pounds, I was at 165. And I'm down to 163, so I don't know what's going on. I thought I was going to hold this because with the OMAD, I don't think I can eat enough food to gain weight. on a OMAD with a low carb diet, even with it. And through my journey, I did, after about 6 months, I started experimenting, and I put a potato in my stew just to give it a little flavor, and I really liked that, but it didn't screw with my my weight loss. And like I said, I can metabolize carbs a little better than most people. If you can't handle the carbs, then you got to be careful. But my pressure cooker, Dr. Gundry, he says that's the only way to eat vegetables because of the lectins that's in the vegetables. They don't like to get ate, so they play chemical warfare with us, and yeah, that'll screw with your joints and everything. And so I much rather pressure cook it because that kills off the lectins in it, and so it's safe to eat any kind of vegetable as long as you pressure cook it. I don't know, he said potatoes and some of these diced tomatoes and some of the other stuff don't really like. Brussels sprouts don't like to be ate. You're eating their babies, so they do have some chemicals in them that will try to make you not eat them, and it could affect people's. And he said that once you pressure cook the food for about 10 minutes, it pretty much gets rid of the lectins in the vegetables. So that's fine. And I just love this. This is just old fashioned, back in a couple hundred years ago, Grandma would just put a pot on the back burner and start adding stuff, and that's the way I was as a kid. My grandmother, we had a wood stove when I was growing up, and she just had this big pot of stuff on the back, and she just kept adding to it, and it stayed back there and simmered and simmered and simmered, and you just go and ladle out a bowl of it, eat it, and it was always delicious, and it filled you up. And us kids, we'd eat a bunch of that, and you wouldn't see us till night. We'd take off, go play, and carry on, explore, and everything. And us little kids, we were all a bunch of little skinny runts, right? Because of we always ate whole food. We didn't eat a lot of processed foods and stuff. So anyhow, that's Jake's old-fashioned stew, basically from what my ancestors did, and I just kind of tweaked it a little bit, and it it works. Matter of fact, I'm going to go in. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm going to throw this in Power Director and render it up, and I'm going to go put my stew on the stove and heat it up and have a bowl. So for now, we'll talk to you later. Bye.